So this is how the miniature ends up at the end of the tutorial. Really like this captain. He's a lot more dynamic than the previous ones that have been released, I think. The fact that you get quite a few little options there for his weaponry as well also adds to that.
Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Primaris Captain in Gravis Armour. That's the recently released one with the nice cloak on his back. He's got the different options for weapons on his right and left hand. So I've gone with the power glove and the power sword, so we'll be working on them. If you'd like to support the channel, our Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Now onto the video.
Now first going to start with Citadel Rakarth flesh. I'm going to use this on his cloak because I want to do the cloak kind of almost beige to whitish kind of colour. Also do this on the parchment for the purity seal, which is on that little reliquary thing on his left hip. And you've got the bone on the skull at the top there too. Next up is Citadel Baneblade Brown. I'm going to use this for all of the leather straps and that kind of thing. He's got the strap going across that's holding his cloak on. He's also got the reliquary on his left hip there, and he's also got two pouches on his right hip. So we're going to paint all of these with the Baneblade Brown. When I say the reliquary, I mean the little kind of tube that's got the purity seal on his left hip there. He does have a reliquary hanging down between his legs there, which is going to be painted gold. So the next colour we're going to use is Vallejo Black. This is going to be to do his helm and all the seals on his armour and also the Aquila on his chest. Now I'm going to use Citadel Averland Sunset. I'm going to use this to paint the little lanyard which he's got going around his waist there, split into two. He's also got some wires going from the weapon on his power glove and also the servo skull coming off his backpack there. So just going to paint those tubes with yellow too. Next colour is Citadel Khorne Red, and this is going to be to do the wax section on the top of the purity seal, just under his cloak there. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Retributor armour. This is going to be to paint the likes of the reliquary, the pommel of his sword, the buckles, the iron halo above him. So anything along those lines, you can whack the gold on there. Now it's a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome, and this is going to be to paint the majority of the silvery metallics on the miniature, so like the blade of the sword. You've also got sections on the bolt weapon attached to his power glove there, or power fist. There's also the sections on the power pack on his back too. With the base colours down, we're now going to start shading and whatnot. I'm going to start with a little bit of Citadel Contrast Snakebite Leather. I'm going to use this on all of the sections we painted with Baneblade Brown earlier on. If you give this a good coat, it gives it that nice sort of tan leathery colour. Link up a video of doing a tan leather, but it's exactly what we're doing here. You get that nice dark section in the recesses, you get the tan leather towards the outside, and then when we scuff that up a bit with a few colours later on, you can get some really nice leather effects on the go. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to use this on both the skull and also the parchment on the purity seal, his cloak, and the little ribbons that he's got on his shoulder and his shin. Say ribbons like the little bits of scroll work is what I'm talking about there. Next up is going to be some Citadel Carrowbird Crimson. I'm going to use this to do the wax part of the purity seal. So it's a very quick layer, this one, and we can move on to the next. Next up, I'm going to use some Citadel Druchii Violet. This is going to be for all of the red armour. So you can get in there, get that Druchii Violet into all those recesses, so that we can then start working on that and re-highlighting and what have you. I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Fugan Orange on all of the bits that we use the Averland Sunset on, so another little quick layer here. Now we're going to be using some Citadel Agrax Earthshade. I'm going to use this on all of the gold. Give us nice dark recesses in that gold, and we can build up the layers and make it nice and shiny. Using Citadel Nuln Oil for all of the silvery metallics, bar the blade of the sword, but you'll see that in a moment. We're going to use Nuln Oil Gloss for that. If you don't have Nuln Oil Gloss, then use the normal Nuln Oil for the sword, and then we can add some gloss varnish at the end of that, just to get those details and the shine back on there. Here's the Citadel Nuln Oil Gloss, and it's another quick layer, just doing this down the blade of the sword. Now if you're doing a blade of the sword, it's always worth trying to get that blade horizontal when you're letting it dry, just so that the shade doesn't run to one end, either the top or the bottom, and make it look a bit weird. We're going to start by using Citadel Mephiston Red to start reapplying the colour back to his armour. So as always, think about where the light's coming from. We want the light to be almost coming from dead ahead, or dead above I should say, not dead ahead. So you have the light coming from above. You want to think about the shade in the recesses and where you're going to be painting this Mephiston Red. So in the case of the knee here, that's going to be red very near the top, but then it's going to be still have that shaded area at the bottom of it. The same with this pad here. You're going to have that shading around the back there where it's not going to be catching much light, while the rest of that plate is going to be nice and red. With the base colour back on again, we're going to use Citadel Evil Sunz Scarlet, and you're going to paint about 50% of the area that you've just done with the Mephiston Red. And again, thinking about where the light's coming from, so the top of this knee, you're going to have the Evil Sunz Scarlet there. That'll go down to the Mephiston Red, and then you'll have the shaded Mephiston Red underneath that. Now I'm going to do some highlights with Citadel Wild Rider Red. Again, thinking about where the light's coming from, so you're going to do some little highlights on those Evil Sunz Scarlet sections. Not too much, not too dark, or not too bright orange. You don't want to be putting it on really, really thick, so you've got really bright highlight. You just want the highlight to stand out enough so you've got that nice gradual lightening of the red armour. Now we are using a little bit of Citadel Trollslayer orange. This is just going to be to do extreme highlights on the areas where they are catching more light. So the sort of top edges and things like that of all the armour battle plates. Just to give them that little extra highlight, make them stand out and make the shades and highlights that little bit more contrasting. Next we're going to use Citadel Rakarth Flesh, and we're going to reapply this to the cloak and also the scroll work on his shoulder and shin and the parchment of the purity seal. You'll also be using this on the skull for the servo skull. So now just working on the parchments and the scroll work and the cloak, we're going to add some Vallejo White to the Rakarth Flesh to lighten that up, and we're going to start highlighting those areas. So again, think about where the light is. If it's coming down from above, you are going to have lighter areas on the top of the sections of cloak. So we have those crests and the concave sections. The top surface of the crests is going to be a lot lighter than the bottom edge of it. So you want to make sure that you're highlighting the right areas and getting those lighter colours onto there. Now I'm going to add some more Vallejo White to the previous mix so that we can get another highlight onto the cloak and all the scroll work. Now we're going to do some final highlights on these areas using a bit more Vallejo White mixed in with the previous mix just to lighten that up. And we're going to do some final highlights on these areas by just painting about 50% of the previous layer with this mix. Now it's back to Citadel Retributor armour, and we're going to start reapplying this to the gold. Again, like you did with the red armour, you want to think about where the light is coming from. So if the light's coming from above, you're going to have more shine on those top surfaces of gold. We'll be highlighting those more than we would do the bottom ones. Next colour is Citadel Liberator Gold. We are going to colour about 50% of the area that we did with the Retributor armour, just to give that a nice lighter shade. Now we're going to mix some Vallejo Modeler Chrome with the Liberator Gold. We're going to start highlighting all these edges on the gold just to make those stand out. So if you think about the light coming from above, you're going to be highlighting the top edges, making those stand out, and any edges which you think will be catching the light a little bit more, you can just add a little bit of this to that. With the Modeler Chrome added, it really does add a lot of shine to the Liberator Gold and lighten that up so you get a really nice highlight on there. Now going to work on the wax section of the Purity Seal. We are going to use a little bit of Citadel Khorne Red, shown twice there just for good measure, like so. We are then going to use a little Citadel Wazdakka Red just to do some highlights on the top edges of those and the areas where it'd be catching more light. And then finally for the seal, we're going to use some Citadel Pink Horror just to add some little spots of lighter shade on there. Next we're going to use some Vallejo Black, and that is going to be to do the helm and recolour any areas of black that you've already painted on there that you may have gone over with one of the previous colours. So we're just basically touching up the black with this one. I'm going to use some Vallejo German Grey to highlight the black. The German Grey is such a colour that is very, very dark, so that when you use it to highlight the black it doesn't stand out too much. It does give it that lighter shade without making the miniature look completely grey, which you can get if you highlight black too much. I'm also going to use this on the seals between the battle plate and also to highlight the Aquila on his chest. Final colour we're going to use is Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey. I'm just going to do some really light highlights on the Aquila on his chest, on the casing for the bolt gun, the trim of the pauldrons and the helm too. Going to leave the seals with just the German Grey and the black on there because I like leaving that as dark, so it's kind of that sort of like strong and sturdy rubber. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Averland Sunset. We are going to reapply the yellow to the lanyard, also to the top surfaces of the tubing coming from his bolt weapon on the power glove there, and also the lenses on his helm. So on the lenses you're going to do like a little crescent on the back side of each of the lenses. So starting from the back top of the lens, it goes about 2/3 of the way down the lens towards the front, getting thinner as it goes. We're now going to highlight these with Citadel Yriel Yellow. So you want to do about 50% of the area that you just painted with the Averland Sunset with Yriel Yellow. Use some Flash Gitz Yellow. It's a nice bright colour, just to do another little highlight on all these yellow sections. I'm going to use a tiny little bit of Vallejo White just to put a spot of light in the front of each lens, and also a tiny little line at the back where we're doing those highlights with the yellows. Now we're going to use some Vallejo Black just to put some stripes on those tubes from the servo skull and from the bolt weapon there too. We're going to start working on the leather now using Citadel Balor Brown. What we're going to do here is use a really thin brush using Balor Brown, and you're going to do horizontal strokes on vertical edges and vertical strokes on horizontal edges. And what this does is this creates a nice rough look to the leather, so it looks like it has been well used and well scuffed. We're now going to add some Citadel Rakarth flesh to the Balor Brown just to lighten that up, and do the same process again but to a lesser extent, so you're highlighting those scuffs on the leather by using this lighter shade. It just looks like a deeper scuff, so it brings them to life a little bit more. I'm going to use a little bit more Rakarth flesh and mix that with the previous mix just to do one final highlight on these leather sections. Again, just doing it to a lesser extent than the previous layer, just to give them that slightly deeper scuff. I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Ushabti bone just to add some colour to that skull on the top there. Again, like you did with the armour, think about where the light's coming from and make sure you put more of the Ushabti bone where that light will be hitting it. We are going to be finishing off the skull using a little bit of Citadel Screaming Skull just to do some thin highlights, just to bring out some of those details on the skull itself. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Contrast Athematic Blue. The reason we're using this is I'm just having a little bit of a play around with it really. I did it on one of the previous videos too. I'm still having a little tinker about with it, using it as though it's got a bit of a glow around those kind of lightning and electricity effects that I paint onto a lot of the blades. So this kind of a work in progress, seeing how the Athematic Blue looks at the end. Doesn't look too bad, if I'm honest. I'm going to try painting on the lightning first next time, and then using this around the edges where it might go to see how that looks. But if you don't want to do the Athematic Blue, or you haven't got it, you can just go straight onto Ahriman Blue and then draw on those same lightning patterns on the blade. And keep them as thin as possible, so drag your brush away from the tip when you're doing these. You get a nice thin lightning down the blade there. We're now going to add some Vallejo White to the Ahriman Blue and just highlight the sections of lightning where they join together. So what I mean by that is if you've got like two pieces of lightning coming together and forming like a T-junction, the main lighter area will be where that T-junction is, and then it gets darker towards just where it's a long thin strip of the lightning. I'll link up a Power Swords video here so you can use that if you want to. Now we've mixed a little bit more Vallejo White with the previous mix. We are just going to do some lighter lightning in those T sections, like I discussed before. So you can see here it's starting to bring out that lightning effect, making those certain sections stand out. Again, we're adding white to the previous mix, and we're just doing a smaller highlight to those lightning areas again. So you'll see these bits getting lighter and lighter and lighter until we finally put on the pure white at the end. Now we're going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix and highlight those sections once again. Slightly smaller highlight. You can see now that it's gone from that Ahriman blue getting lighter and lighter with each layer. Finally, we're going to use pure Vallejo White just to do some tiny little bits in those lighter sections, just to really make them stand out and give them that final touch of lightning. It's the finished Captain. Really pleased with how it turned out. There's loads of cool details on it. I know a couple of people like Jono have magnetised, I think, different weapons so you can swap them over if you wanted to. But really pleased how this guy's turned out, despite me gluing them all together.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much.
If you like the channel, you enjoy the content and you'd like to support me, my Coffee and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.